think we've got everyone in position. Thank you very much, everybody. Good evening, and thanks for joining us here on what we've called an open briefing to discuss the rise of the self-employed. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and the elders from other communities who may be here today. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank our attending members of Parliament. You've got a very big title. I don't know how big your business card is, but the honourable, I'm going to read through it because I'm going to read through it. The Honourable Ed Husick MP, Shadow Parliamentary Secretary to the Leader of the Opposition, Shadow Parliamentary Secretary assisting with innovation and startups, Shadow Parliamentary Secretary to the Shadow Treasurer, and the man with the biggest business card in Canberra. You're an innovator. You're an innovator. I'd also like to thank, and he's not here yet, and I'll tell you why in a second, the Honourable Philip Dalladakis MLC, who's the Victorian Minister for Small Business, Innovation and Trade, and we are very rapt to have him as well here tonight. At the moment, he's over just across the road, working on some challenges with the Geelong Council. So I'm sure he will work his way through that, as will the rest of them. The Honourable Tim Richardson MP, State Member for Mordialloc, I believe is dropping in, and he's also my local member, so hello Tim. The Honourable Mary Ann Thomas MP as well, State Member for Macedon. So thank you very much for all of them attending tonight. And well, my name's Cameron Vanden Dungen, and I'll hopefully just be hosting this tonight, less of me and more of the guys standing up here around me. My little backstory is second generation shareholder in the 40 Winks business. My father was one of the founders, and good to see him joining us here tonight as well. Thank you very much. What's interesting about 40 Winks, especially in the self-employed and the small business space, is that we comprise about 70 families, of which own franchises within the group, and about 20 families that actually own the entire master franchise. Small families, small business. They started in the early 1980s and took a very big gamble during some tough times, and that's why it's pretty close to me, because I grew up in a small business family, and I'm very, very proud to say it, and I'm sure many other people did as well. So when contacting each of our speakers tonight, I put the following contention to them. The Australian workforce has been digitally disrupted, and public policy hasn't noticed. It's my belief, and I've stated it quite openly on a number of different forums, that the eternal battleground between the left and the right wing has now moved beyond large corporations fighting unions over rights and entitlements. And this is what our discussion is going to be about today, the rise of the self-employed. The basis for this discussion has come out of a global trend towards self-employment, often referred to as the gig economy, and I had it mentioned to me earlier today. It's also referred to as a sharing economy, the on-demand or the contingent workforce. Before we get to our speakers, I want to set the scene for you as to what's going on globally. We'll start with the UK. In 1975, 8.7% of the workforce was self-employed. By 2008, it was 12%, and by 2016, this year, at the start of the year, 16% of the workforce in the UK was self-employed, or is self-employed. So that's 4.61 million workers are self-employed in the UK. Now, to put it into perspective, the public service, now it's quite a big public service in the UK, is 5.35 million. That's only a gap of 750,000 workers now. Self-employed numbers, I believe, are rising in the UK at about 80,000 a month, and the public sector's dropping at about 12,000 a month. So you can do the math pretty quickly and realise that the self-employed or the small business sector is going to outgrow public positions within the next couple of years. In the US, self-employed Americans and the workers they hired account for 44 million jobs in 2014, or 30% of the national workforce. That's US Census data. That's actually massive when you think about it. The self-employed, 14.6 million are self-employed in the US, and they represent 10%. Now they also employ a massive amount, another 20%. So they've got jobs for 29.4 million other workers. So 14.6 million employ another 29.4 in the US. There's a NASDAQ listed company called Intuit, and innovation companies will know about Intuit. They've done a bit of research recently that showed that there is an estimated 7.6 million Americans who will be regularly working as providers in the on-demand economy by 2020, more than doubling the current total of 3.2 million. Now, on-demand workers are people that will have maybe have other jobs, or maybe their only sole income is part of the sharing economy, so they might be working for Uber, They might be working for just in time. They might have just finished a job with a company. Their job was made redundant, and they're now being all of a sudden employed as consultants the very next day. It's when needed, they're employed. When not needed, they have no work. So they're talking about massive growth in that. The rise of the on-demand economy is part of a broader long-term growth trend in the contingent workforce. So the last minute, call them up, get them in. It's grown from 17% 25 years ago to 36% today, and is expected to reach 43% of the total workforce in the States by 2020. So a massive rise, massive change in focus. Now let's go to Australia. In June 2014, there were 2.1 million active trading businesses in Australia. The vast majority of these were self-employed. That's like 62% of all companies in Australia are the self-employed, no employees. This equates to roughly 1.2 million self-employed business owners in Australia, just shy of 80%, so 79% of them support their family household with the income from that business. In June 2015, there were roughly 1.9 million public sector employees. So if you think back to that number, the gap in the UK, well, the gap in Australia now is only 700,000. So we're rapidly changing as well. So we could probably take a lot of learnings from the UK. Who are they and why are they changing? The Intuit report that I talked about earlier reveals a broad range of motivations and differing levels of satisfaction among 5 distinct groups of on-demand workers, or the new workforce we're talking about. The business builders, they're driven by the desire to be their own boss. That's 22% of their on-demand workers. The career freelancers, which is 20%, they're happy building a career through independent work. So they don't really want to work for anyone, they're happy to be contractors and just roll in and out of jobs. The side giggers, this is the Uber people. They seek financial stability by supplementing existing income. I'm actually a side gigger. I've got a couple of little businesses on the side. I do some commentary on weekends just to make a couple of extra dollars for mortgages and you name what else. The passionistas, and I think we've got a speaker that will fall into this category very shortly, looking for flexibility to do something they love. That's 14%. And then we've got the substituters. They're replacing a traditional job that no longer exists or is available, and that's 18%. So that is the background on tonight's discussion. I've invited speakers from FinTech. I've invited speakers from digital retail and also from health tech. So we will hear from each of them, and as well as our lovely politicians talking about what they're going to do to help us down the track, especially in a federal election year. You're here to help. So we're going to hear directly from each of those that made the leap of faith into the unknown, and hopefully we'll have a better understanding of their motivations for doing so and how we can develop public policy to better reflect the needs of our adjusting society. And I'll leave you with this thought before they speak. If you're being self-employed or you are self-employed, try and get, as I heard Charlotte tell me before, try and get a credit card. Try and get a home loan. If you have been or are self-employed and you're a female starting a company, good luck having a baby. Who's going to help you? Where is there? There's nothing. There's no support for any of these people. So for people to leave large corporate and make their way into small business, they are taking a giant leap of faith. So the people we'll be hearing from tonight have actually weighed up the consequences of it, and they've made the decision to leap in. And so let's find out from them. Open the batting tonight.